How do you save lives when the only way to save them is to take one? Sloane Barrett spent 11 years trying to outrun that question, serving as a medic, healing the wounded, and refusing the gift her father gave her. Then one rooftop sniper, one wounded teammate, and one impossible choice forced her to become both things at once. This is the story of a woman torn between mercy and violence, and the truth that survival often demands both.
It was a Monday morning in early March of 2025, and 43 veterans packed the waiting room at the Naval Medical Center in San Diego. Among 42 men sat a single woman who wished she could be anywhere else on Earth. Sloane Catherine Barrett was positioned stiffly in the third row, her back straight against the hard plastic chair. At 29 years old, she stood 5 feet and 3 inches tall in her Navy uniform. Her 118-pound body was a testament to pure discipline, often causing others to underestimate her strength. She wore her blonde hair in a tight bun that met regulations perfectly. Her blue eyes swept across the room, observing details most people would miss. For 3 entire years, she had successfully avoided this exact appointment, using every excuse from deployments to sudden minor illnesses. She had tried anything to prevent the day a doctor would discover the secret she had hidden for over a decade. But this new wellness program for veterans was now mandatory, with no room for exceptions or delays. This was true even for a petty officer first class, who would rather eat glass than have her past uncovered. The check-in screen cycled through the last names: Johnson, Patterson, Mackenzie. The air smelled of weak government coffee and the distinct worry of men waiting to see how their bodies had failed them. Veterans from the Korean War sat with shaking hands. Those from Vietnam stared at nothing in particular. Men who served in Desert Storm were favoring old injuries. The younger veterans from Afghanistan and Iraq were still able to pretend that everything was fine. Sloane instinctively did a quick scan of the room, an old and dangerous habit. She saw a Marine in the corner shifting his body to ease pressure on a bad left knee. A few seats down, a sailor tried to conceal his withdrawal tremors with a newspaper. Near the window, a soldier mentally noted every exit and possible line of fire. She understood these behaviors because she shared them. The screen changed. Barrett, S.K. She rose to her feet with no extra movements that could draw any notice. 11 years in the service had taught her how to become invisible when she needed to. She was the corpsman who blended into the background of a busy clinic, the petty officer who never complained, the woman who kept her head down and her history secret. But some secrets, especially those carved into your skin, do not stay hidden. Room 3B was located down a long, sterile corridor. It was a typical examination room with clinical white walls that had absorbed a million silent confessions of human frailty. A blood pressure cuff hung from a device, looking like an instrument for pulling out the truth. Charts on the wall showed the muscles and bones Sloane had learned by heart in Corpsman School 11 years ago. Lieutenant Commander Reynolds walked in, tablet in hand, offering the practiced smile of a doctor who had seen it all before. He appeared to be in his mid-40s, with grey hair at his temples and a wedding ring worn down from years of nervous twisting. He was the type of doctor who had seen just enough to be good at his job, but not so much that he had become cynical. "Petty Officer Barrett," he began, looking at his device. "Hospital Corpsman First Class, with 11 years of active service, now assigned to—" He raised his eyebrows a little. "SEAL Team 3. That is correct, sir. And how long have you been on the team?" "2 weeks, sir." Reynolds made a few quick notes. "This is an annual wellness check, a standard procedure for all veterans in this initiative. Do you have any injuries or complaints for me?" "No, sir." "Are you on any medications?" "No, sir." "Any known allergies?" "No, sir." Reynolds lifted his gaze from the tablet and truly looked at her for the first time. "They cleared a 5'3" woman for full duty with the SEAL team?" Sloane held his stare without wavering. "Sir, I surpass all physical requirements mandated by the Navy." I have no doubt that you do. He set the tablet down on the counter. Very well, let us begin with your vitals. I will need you to remove your blouse so I can check your heart and lungs. Sloane's hand stopped just before they reached the top button. This was the moment. The exact situation she had mentally escaped 100 times before. She had booked appointments in cold weather to have an excuse for long sleeves. She had asked for female doctors who might not be as inquisitive. She had invented scheduling problems to avoid full exams. But today she had run out of escape plans and excuses. There was only a male doctor doing his job and a secret written on her body. Her fingers finally started to work on the buttons. One by one they came undone and she took off her blouse. Underneath she wore a standard navy t-shirt, but that could not hide everything. Reynolds moved behind her with his stethoscope. Take a deep breath. She inhaled, held the air in her lungs, and then exhaled slowly. The cold metal of the stethoscope touched her back. This was just a routine medical procedure. She had performed this exact exam on others hundreds of times as a corpsman, but being the one examined felt like a violation she could not put into words. Okay, one more time. Hold on. Reynolds's hand stopped moving. 3 long seconds of silence hung in the air. Then a fourth. And a fifth. Petty Officer Barrett. His tone had changed completely. The polite doctor was gone, replaced by someone with a sharp, professional curiosity. I am going to need you to take off your t-shirt. Sir, the heart exam doesn't usually require. I have noticed something. I need a closer inspection. Please remove the shirt. There was no arguing. No way out. Sloane lifted the t-shirt over her head. The scar was located high on her left shoulder. It showed an entry point on the front and an exit wound on the back. It was the kind of injury that told a complete story to anyone trained to read physical trauma. The edges were clean where military surgeons had carefully removed damaged tissue. The scarring was neat and precise, showing the work of experts who had saved her arm, and possibly her life. But it was the sheer size of the wound that made Reynolds freeze. He walked to her front, his eyes fixed on the mark. Then he did something unusual. He used his fingers to estimate the diameter of the entry point. He was mentally tracing the bullet's trajectory based on the exit wound. This is from a gunshot. A high-powered rifle, he stated with total confidence. The entry size. This is a .338 caliber round. It might be a .338 Lapua Magnum. Sloane said nothing. Petty officer, that is ammunition for a sniper rifle. How does a Navy corpsman? The door suddenly opened without anyone knocking. Admiral James Morrison stepped into the room, and the entire atmosphere shifted. He was 68 years old, stood 6'2", and still had the frame of a man who had spent 40 years carrying heavy equipment. His silver hair was cut in a short, military style. His eyes belonged to a man who had made hard decisions in difficult situations and had learned to carry that weight. He was conducting his quarterly review of the Veterans Wellness Program, greeting the staff and shaking hands. He was acting as the friendly face of the Navy's commitment to its people. He looked at Reynolds, and then his gaze fell on Sloane. His eyes focused on the scar. Everything in the room seemed to come to a halt. Morrison's expression changed 3 times in under 2 seconds. First came recognition, which was followed by shock. Then a look that was a mixture of sorrow and pride washed over his face. "Barrett," he said, his voice husky and uncertain. "Sloane Barrett." Sloane reflexively stood at attention, despite not wearing her shirt. "Sir." Morrison moved toward her. He was not being aggressive. He was being careful. He approached her like he was nearing something precious that could also be dangerous. That scar. He did not need to get any closer. Its size and position told him everything. Mike was the one who taught you to shoot. This was not a question. It was a statement that carried the weight of years of history. Sloane's throat felt constricted. "Yes, sir." Reynolds looked back and forth between the two of them, completely lost. "Admiral, you know this petty officer?" "Doctor?" Morrison's voice was filled with 4 decades of authority. "I require 5 minutes alone with Petty Officer Barrett." "Sir, I am in the process of conducting an examination. 5 minutes." Reynolds recognized a command when he heard one. He exited the room, and the door clicked shut behind him like a vault. Morrison and Sloane stood about 3 feet from each other. The air between them felt thick with things left unsaid. It was filled with the memory of a funeral from 13 years earlier. He had been the one to present a folded American flag to a grieving widow and her daughter. He had looked into the eyes of a 16-year-old girl with her arm in a sling, eyes that had seen far too much tragedy. "Mike Barrett," Morrison began, his voice softening. "Gunnery Sergeant Michael Barrett. 2nd Battalion, 5th Marines, Scout Sniper Platoon." He had 78 confirmed kills across 3 tours of duty. He was the finest marksman I ever had the privilege to know, and he was the best friend I ever had. "You were present at the funeral, sir." Sloane's voice was steady and quiet. "You gave my mother the flag. I was 16 then, having just completed my junior year of high school. My arm was in the very same sling. I remember it well. The incident that resulted in that scar, it took place 6 months before Mike passed away. A training accident, they called it. The rifle had a malfunction while you were at the range. A piece of it shot right through you. You were very fortunate to have kept your arm. I was fortunate to be alive. Mike always blamed himself for it. He said he should have inspected the rifle more thoroughly. He told me he should have seen the warning signs of metal fatigue." Morrison paused for a moment. "He also shared with me that, after you had healed, you made a promise to your mother that you would never handle a gun again." Sloane's jaw tightened. Even after 11 years of counseling, after telling herself that she had made peace with her father's death, the anger was still there. It felt like a piece of metal stuck too close to her heart to ever be safely taken out. If he felt so bad, why did he go back? Why did he leave again after just 6 months? Her words came out sharper than she intended. Morrison did not even blink. "Because men like Mike can't stop. We tell ourselves we are keeping people safe. We think we are the only ones who can do the job. We believe our skills are too valuable to just stay home." He took a breath. "It is a story we tell ourselves to keep doing the one thing we know," he said. "And that thing got him killed. It did. Helmand Province, October of 2012. An ambush with a hidden bomb, then a full attack. He was on watch for a patrol. He saw the trap, called it in, and stayed put to cover their escape. He drew fire from everywhere. He got every Marine out, but not himself." The sadness in Morrison's voice was heavy. His last radio call was 4 words. "Marines are clear. Out." Sloane squeezed her eyes shut, breathing through the ache in her chest. She opened them. "I joined the Navy in 2014, 2 years after he died. I became a corpsman. I have served for 11 years. My record is clean, with good reviews and several deployments. I did everything right, the way he would have wanted. I rescue people. I kept the promise I made to my mother, and nobody knows you are a shooter." "No one at all, sir." Morrison studied her face. "Until now. What is your current assignment?" "SEAL Team 3. I started 2 weeks ago." Something shifted in Morrison's eyes as a memory surfaced. "Team 3 was my old unit, 30 years ago. Your commander is Blake Hawkins, a good leader who came up the hard way. He will test you, but he will also watch your back as much as possible. I do not need special favors. Everyone needs someone looking out for them," Morrison said, his tone firm, "especially when they are hiding a deadly secret. Sloane, I have to ask you something. Please think hard before you answer. She held her breath. If your team gets into trouble and they really need you, not the medic, but the sniper. The girl Mike Barrett trained for 4 years. The one who knows about wind, distance, and the Earth's spin at 200 meters. If they need that person, Sloane, and only a promise made from grief at 16 years old is stopping you, what will you do? The question hung in the silent room. Sloane glanced at the scar in the reflection before her. An entry and exit wound, a permanent mark from the day the rifle jammed. The day she almost died learning the skills her father demanded she learn. I do not know, sir. Yes, you do. Morrison's voice was gentle but firm. You know exactly what you will do. You will do what Mike would have done. It is what everyone in uniform does when that moment arrives. You do what is required. The promise will have to be broken, and you will learn to live with it, because a broken promise is better than dead teammates you might have saved. Sloane looked him square in the eye. Is that what you did, sir? More times than I can count. He gave a dark smile. Welcome to the club nobody wants to join. We meet every night around 3 in the morning, when sleep will not come. Morrison walked to the door, then stopped and turned back. Mike always said something about why he taught you to shoot, even with your mother's worries. He said, I am not raising a killer. I am raising a protector. One day someone will need protecting, and my daughter will be the only one who can do it. Morrison's hand was on the doorknob. I think that day is coming very soon, Sloane. When it arrives, do not hesitate. Mike would not want you to. Sir, Sloane's voice made him stop. Thank you for coming to the funeral. Your being there meant a lot. He was my brother. You are his daughter. That makes you family. Morrison pulled the door open. Stay in touch. If you need anything, advice, someone to listen, or help with command, you call me. Anything at all. Is that understood? Understood, sir. Then he was gone. Reynolds returned a moment later, his professional attitude back in place. He finished the examination, never mentioned the scar, and approved her for full duty. He sent her away with paperwork and a future appointment she never planned to make. Sloane changed her clothes in silence, buttoning her blouse, tucking it in, and adjusting her belt. In the mirror, she looked like any other sailor after a normal checkup. But she was not. Not any more. Someone knew her secret, and a secret that is shared is never truly yours again. The SEAL Team 3 area was at the Naval Amphibious Base in Coronado, a tough place built from hard work. It was enclosed by concrete walls and chain-link fences, with buildings weathered by salt air and hard use. The Pacific Ocean was nearby, where new recruits discover that comfort does not last, and pain is a great teacher. Sloane had been there for 14 days. It was long enough to learn the layout, but not long enough to feel like she belonged. It was Tuesday morning at 8 o'clock. The briefing room smelled like coffee, gun oil, and men who consider a 5-mile run to be a light warm-up. 12 operators were in their chairs. 11 of them looked over as she entered. Commander Blake Hawkins stood at the front of the room. He was 44 years old, with a face that showed 2 decades of tough decisions and difficult places. His eyes saw it all and forgot nothing. He had 22 years in the service and 3 combat tours just with this team. He was the kind of leader who earned his respect the hard way. Petty Officer Barrett, you are on time. Please find a seat. Sloane picked a chair in the last row. It was the unofficial spot for the medic, close enough to be ready, but far enough to stay out of the way during planning. Gentlemen, Hawkins's voice stopped the quiet conversations. This is Hospital Corpsman First Class Sloane Barrett. She is our new medic. She has 11 years of active duty, with 3 combat tours, 2 in Afghanistan and 1 in Iraq. She is certified in battlefield medicine and advanced trauma care. She comes highly recommended from Naval Medical. The room went quiet. 12 pairs of eyes were on her, weighing her value against the risk. Chief Warrant Officer Hayes was the first to speak. He was 50, a former Marine who joined the Navy for reasons he kept to himself. Everyone still called him Gunny, a habit from his old service. At 5 feet 3 inches, his voice was rough from cigarettes he had given up 10 years ago. "With all due respect, Doc, can you handle a 60-pound medkit and full combat gear?" "Yes, Chief." "With body armor, front and back plates included?" "Yes, Chief." "Plus ammunition, water, and your personal gear?" "Yes, Chief." Gunny leaned back in his chair. "We will see on Friday." Senior Chief Petty Officer Wade Hollister sat 2 seats over. At 48 years old he was quiet, like a man who has seen too much to waste words. His call sign was Stone because you could never read his emotions. He never hurried and never cracked under pressure. Stone stayed quiet, just watching her with eyes that seemed to be measuring everything. Petty Officer First Class Declan Briggs was slouched in his chair like he ran the place. He was 32, with red hair and freckles that made him look much younger. His voice was easily heard from 3 rows back. They called him Frost because he was ice cold in a fight. At the moment he just looked skeptical. The last medic was 6'1", 190 pounds, Frost said, making his doubt clear. And he had a hard time keeping up. "No offense, but you are." "Small," Sloane finished his sentence. "I am aware. I can handle it." "We are not going to carry you if you fall behind," Frost said to his friend, Petty Officer Dylan Garrett. "Just laying down the ground rules." Hawkins cut them off. "Barrett has passed every physical standard the Navy requires for her role. She is here because she earned it. Her place on this team will be decided by her work. Those are the same rules for everyone." He looked directly at Sloane. "Do you understand, Petty Officer?" "Perfectly, sir." "Good. The integration meeting is on Thursday. Physical training is tomorrow at 5:30 in the morning. The ruck march is Friday, 12 miles with a full pack. Any questions?" There was none. Dismissed. The men began to get up and leave. Sloane stayed seated, pretending to review medical notes she had memorized. Stone paused by the exit and glanced back. "Barrett." "Yes, Senior Chief. Welcome aboard. Do not let Frost get to you. He tests everyone." "I understand, Senior Chief." Stone watched her for another moment, as if he could sense something she was hiding. Then he left. Sloane was by herself in the now empty room. She remembered Morrison's words about promises that are made and promises that are broken. She thought about the decision she would have to make soon. On Wednesday at 5:30 in the morning, the sky over Coronado was still dark. The air was cool, a small sign that even Southern California had different seasons. 12 operators and 1 medic stood in formation for their workout. It was the typical SEAL warm-up, meant to weed out anyone who was not completely committed. The workout involved a 2-mile run, exercises, and drills, all part of a normal combat-ready routine. Sloane kept a consistent pace. She was not up front with Frost and Garrett, who were leading, but she was not at the back where weakness would be noticed. She ran right in the middle of the pack, her breathing controlled, her energy conserved. She could overhear Frost's comment to Garrett, running beside him. "I will bet you $20 she quits during the ruck march on Friday. She has lasted 2 weeks. 2 weeks is not the same as 12 miles with a full pack in the California desert." Sloane remained quiet. She saved her breath. Words were useless. Only actions would prove her worth. Friday came with a clear sky and growing heat. It was a 12-mile ruck march, carrying a minimum of a 60-pound pack and full gear. They were in the desert terrain east of the base, where the temperature was expected to reach 95 degrees by midday. The team gathered at 0600. The sun was already rising, and the air was warming. Sloane made a final adjustment to her pack. It contained medical gear, intravenous fluids, bandages, tourniquets, chest seals, and blood-clotting agents. Everything to save a life when a body is ready to give up. It weighed 62 pounds in total, on a frame that weighed 118. The first mile felt simple. The second was just routine. By mile 4, her shoulders began to signal their discomfort. At mile 6, her hips started to protest as well. By mile 8, each step was a battle between her determination and her body. But she had faced tougher challenges in medic training, carrying 200-pound dummies over obstacle courses. She had done it in field exercises, helping mock casualties while instructors used smoke grenades and fired blanks. And she had done it on actual missions, moving wounded men who were twice her weight because letting them die was not an option. Pain is a temporary feeling. Quitting is forever. At mile 12, she reached the end. Her time was 2 hours and 41 minutes. It was not the fastest. Frost and Garrett had finished 18 minutes earlier. Stone and Gunny were 12 minutes ahead, but she completed the course. She did it on her own, without falling behind. Hawkins checked his watch as she passed, giving a single nod. "Acceptable, Barrett." Gunny came over and gave her a water bottle. "You can walk with the weight. That is something, but walking is not fighting." "Understood, Chief. We will see how you do when people are shooting back." Monday was weapons qualification day. The range was set 20 meters inland, far from civilian areas and their noise complaints. Targets were at 50, 100, and 300 meters. The air smelled of gunpowder and hot metal, filled with the sharp sound of controlled shots. Sloane only qualified with the Beretta M9 pistol. Her military job specialty did not authorize rifle training. Corpsmen carried pistols for self-defense, not for offensive attacks. 40 rounds, 40 hits. She earned an expert marksmanship rating. Gunny watched from the observation booth, raising an eyebrow at the tight grouping of her shots. The doc can really shoot a pistol. Hawkins nodded and made a note. That is good to know if the fighting gets close. The operators then moved on to rifle qualifications. They started with M4 carbines, then moved to the serious weapon, the M40A5 sniper rifle. Sloane stood behind the firing line, officially observing, but she was actually remembering. The rifle was very familiar, too familiar. It was the same model her father had used, with the same stock design and scope system. It had the same balance and weight. Her fingers twitched without her thinking. It was muscle memory from 1,000 hours of practice. She remembered lying flat in the New Mexico desert, learning to read the wind from her father's voice in her ear. He taught her the breathing cycle that matched her own heartbeat. Stone was shooting at a target 600 meters away. It was a standard NATO chest-sized target. His first shot missed, hitting 8 inches to the left. Sloane's lips moved, and she whispered so quietly it was hard to hear. "When pushing left, compensate with your right shoulder." Stone made the small adjustment. His second shot hit the center of the target. Senior Chief Wade Hollister stood 5 feet from Sloane. He was close enough to hear her whisper. His head turned just a little. His eyes met hers. Sloane quickly looked away, but it was too late. Stone fired 4 more shots. All of them hit. It was a respectable group of shots for 600 meters. When he finished, Stone walked past Sloane, close enough to whisper without anyone else hearing. "Thanks for the wind call, Doc." Sloane kept her face blank and said nothing. But Stone knew. Men like Stone always filed away information like that for later. Thursday afternoon was the medical drill, tactical combat casualty care. This was the test that showed who had only read textbooks and who had actually treated trauma under fire. The simulation was an IED blast. There were 2 casualties with very realistic injuries. They had limited supplies. The hostile environment was simulated by an instructor who fired blanks and threw smoke grenades. Sloane moved on pure instinct. The first casualty had a severed femoral artery. There was massive bleeding. She had 90 seconds before shock would set in and 2 minutes before death. Her hands moved with practiced skill. She took a tourniquet from her pack and placed it high on the thigh, above the wound. She wrapped it once and threaded it through the buckle. Then she inserted the windlass rod. She twisted it hard. The first casualty screamed. The role player was acting realistically. Sloane kept twisting. Each turn tightened the band, squeezed the artery, and turned the red spray into a slow trickle. 3 full turns. 4. The bleeding stopped. It took her 19 seconds from identifying the wound to securing the tourniquet. Standard rules allowed for 30. The second casualty had a tension pneumothorax. Air was trapped in the chest cavity, causing the lung to collapse. It was slowly killing the patient. She needed to perform a needle decompression. She found the spot in the second intercostal space on the mid-clavicular line and used a 14-gauge needle. She felt for the correct spot through the training vest, found the insertion point, and pushed the needle through. There was a pop. Air hissed out, the pressure was released, and breathing was restored. She started an IV line next, all while the instructor kept up the simulated hostile fire. She used combat gauze for other wounds and gave morphine for the pain. She did all of this while smoke made it hard to see and blank rounds cracked overhead. When the drill was over, Gunny stood over the casualties. He checked her work, he checked her times. "Damn good, Doc. The best I have seen from a new team member." Hawkins nodded in approval. Barrett knows her craft. Frost leaned against the wall with his arms crossed, watching and judging. Medical skills are fine, even necessary, but we need operators who can fight back when things get dangerous. A combat medic is not a combat operator. His words were spoken loudly across the training yard, meant for her to hear. Sloane heard them and stored the information away. There was no anger, no hurt pride, just information. She understood their worry. They had lost corpsmen before. Good ones, brave ones, corpsmen who could save lives but could not return fire when the shooting began. They became a burden instead of a help in a close fight. They were asking the one question every team asks: will you get us killed? It was a fair question. It was one she could not answer with words, only with actions. And those actions were coming much faster than any of them knew. The mission briefing was on Friday afternoon. The team met in the classified planning room. Screens on the wall showed satellite images and maps with GPS coordinates. There were intelligence reports from sources Sloane was not cleared to even know about. Hawkins stood at the front with a remote control in his hand. His expression was serious. "Gentlemen, Doc, we leave on Monday at 0400. The destination is classified until we are in the air. The mission is a recovery operation. 2 American contractors, civilian security, were kidnapped 6 days ago near the Syrian and Iraqi border. Our current intelligence says they are in this compound." The screen changed. It showed an overhead image of a small village. Single-story buildings were grouped around a central courtyard. The desert was all around. There was only one road in and one road out. The enemy force is estimated to be between 8 and 12 combatants. They are a mix of local militia and foreign fighters. All are armed and all are motivated. The contractors are very important from a diplomatic view. The State Department wants them back. Our job is to go get them. Hawkins clicked to the next slide. It showed the timeline, approach routes, and backup plans. We will insert at 2200 local time. We will approach on foot from this position, 2 kilometers to the north. Stone will provide overwatch from this ridge line here. He will have an elevation advantage 800 meters from the target. The entry team of 6 will breach the compound and recover the packages. Then we will exfiltrate to the primary landing zone. The total time on target is 90 minutes at the most. Frost raised his hand. What is the doc's role, sir? Hawkins looked at Sloane. Barrett will remain at base camp with communications. This is standard operating procedure for a new corpsman on their first mission. She will monitor communications and prepare to treat casualties if we bring anyone wounded back. It was expected, reasonable, and safe. But deep inside Sloane's mind, her father's voice whispered, "They do not trust you yet. You have not earned it. You will." Hawkins's attention turned back to her. "Medical preparation is your responsibility. I want you ready for the worst-case scenarios. That includes gunshot wounds, shrapnel injuries, burns, and heat or dehydration casualties. We will brief the team on Monday morning before we go. We will cover medical plans and our equipment." "Yes, sir." "Does anyone have questions?" Hawkins scanned the faces in the room. Not a single hand went up. "Good. Medical brief on Monday at 0700. We will inspect gear at 0800. Movement briefing is at 0900. The full practice run is at 1300. Rest up this weekend. Our real work starts on Monday. You are dismissed." The team began to exit the room. All the usual laughter and easy conversation from before had disappeared. It was time for the mission. The men started to change into serious operators. Stone stayed behind after everyone else departed. He approached Sloane while she collected her computer and papers. "Barrett." "Yes, Senior Chief. You have been in a war zone before, in actual combat, not just practice sessions." "3 tours, Senior Chief. I went to Afghanistan 2 times and Iraq 1 time. Each deployment was for 6 months. Did you engage in combat, or did you only stay on the base?" "I cared for wounded soldiers brought back from gunfights. Our forward base was hit by mortar fire on 2 occasions. I provided medical support for convoys outside the wire 3 different times. We were hit by explosive devices and took enemy fire both times." Stone gave a slow nod, considering what she told him. "Monday could be different. A base camp is not always a secure place. Are you confident with that M9 pistol you mastered?" "Yes, Senior Chief." "Good. Always have it with you." He began to walk off, but then he paused. "That wind adjustment on the firing range. 600 meters, 8 inches of movement. You made that calculation very quickly." Sloane looked at him with a firm, direct stare. "It was simple observation, Senior Chief. I was only looking at the flags and the heat shimmer." "Right. Observation." Stone's face remained unreadable. "Continue observing, Doc. Sometimes the small details we see are what keep people alive." He left Sloane alone in the mission room. She gazed at the satellite photo on the monitor. It showed the building where life would change in 3 days. A place where old promises would clash with new realities. Her hand went to her shoulder unconsciously. She felt the outline of the scar beneath her clothes. For 11 years she had held onto a promise. In 3 days that promise would be challenged like never before. She was not sure if she could maintain it, but she could hear her father's voice. He had already told her the answer. Some promises must always be honored. Others are designed to be broken at just the right time. Monday would reveal what kind of promise she had made. The C-130 landed at a secret forward operating base. It was located somewhere between Syria and areas not found on any maps. The temperature was 118 degrees Fahrenheit. The desert air was like breathing inside of a hot oven. Sloane walked down the ramp with 62 pounds of medical equipment on her back. The heat felt like a heavy weight pressing in on her. The team went about their tasks with expert efficiency. They performed checks on their gear and their weapons. It was a familiar pattern for men who had done this so many times it was automatic. She found a spot of shade next to a concrete wall. She took a drink of water. She inspected her medical kit for a 3rd time. Every item was in its proper place. She arranged the instruments of her profession, tourniquets, special gauze, intravenous kits, chest bandages, and morphine. Hawkins stood inside a tent that smelled like dirt and fuel, preparing his things. The latest information was not good. The targets were confirmed to be at the site, but the number of guards was 15 to 20 men, far more than anticipated. But the mission would still go forward. When Hawkins asked for questions, Stone raised a hand to inquire about the path through Exfil. The main landing area was going to stay the same. The backup location was 3 kilometers to the north if they were discovered. The helicopter would arrive in 30 minutes after they radioed for it. The rules for the fight were very specific. Any sign of aggression would be treated as a threat. They needed to rescue the targets and keep each other safe with as little force as possible. Hawkins made eye contact with every man and stated, "This is a rescue, not a revenge mission. We go in, get our people, and come out without any issues." The meeting continued with details on schedules, emergency plans, and radio procedures. Sloane absorbed every word. Her role was straightforward. She needed to remain at the base camp, listen to the radio, and be prepared for any injured team members. It was a safe and easy assignment, just right for a new medic. But she understood that in a conflict, things rarely remained easy for very long. The team departed at 0400 hours in a 6-vehicle group, moving toward a meeting point 12 kilometers away from the objective. The terrain resembled the landscape of Mars. There was only red sand, stone hills, and a wavy heat that made the horizon seem like it was melting. Sloane was in the 3rd vehicle, seated opposite Frost and Garrett. Nobody said a word. Each person wore a serious expression. The change from joking companions to focused warriors was now total. At the meeting point, the trucks made a defensive perimeter and the camouflage covers were put in place. The team quickly established their defensive positions. This would be their command post, the place where Sloane would remain while her team handled the high-risk work. As she set up the aid station, Stone approached. His M4A5 rifle was held so naturally it looked like an extension of his arm. He spoke first. "How are you doing, Doc?" "I am holding up, Senior Chief. Is the heat bothering you?" "I can handle it," she said. Stone gave her a simple nod. His attention shifted to the medical equipment she had laid out. He noticed the perfect order with each piece of gear precisely placed for immediate use. "You have clearly done this before," he said, not as a question. "This is my 3rd tour, Senior Chief. The location changes, but the job is always the same." She had worked in Afghanistan and Iraq, treating everything from shrapnel wounds and roadside bomb victims to soldiers injured in firefights. Sloane looked him directly in the eyes. "I have seen what happens when things go wrong." Stone was silent for a moment. Then he asked a question that caught her completely by surprise. "What do you think of the plan?" Operators did not usually ask a corpsman for a tactical opinion. "I think 15 to 20 enemies is a lot for a 7-man entry team," she said. "Yeah," Stone said, his eyes drifting toward the target area hidden beyond the horizon. "It is." He walked away, leaving Sloane with the strong feeling that she had just passed some kind of test. The sun slowly moved across the sky. The temperature climbed to 122 degrees. Sloane forced herself to stay hydrated, drinking water and taking electrolyte tablets. She monitored her own condition just like she would a patient. At 1600 hours, Petty Officer Dylan Garrett stumbled near his vehicle. Sloane's head snapped up instantly. Her medical training kicked in before she had a moment to process. Garrett was 24 years old and a solid performer with no major medical history, but right now his face was flushed a deep red. He had stopped sweating, and his skin looked dry despite the intense heat. These were classic signs of a serious problem. Sloane crossed the distance in 4 quick steps. "Garrett, sit down," he replied. "I am good, Doc," she commanded. "Sit down now." The command in her voice was a surprise to him, so he sat. Sloane took out her thermometer and checked his pulse, skin temperature, and his mental state. His pulse was 130, but it felt weak. His skin was hot and dry to the touch, and his pupils were slightly dilated. This was heat stroke, not just heat exhaustion. This was the kind that could be fatal. "Chief Hayes!" Her voice sliced through the camp. The gunny hurried over. "What is going on?" "Heat stroke," Sloane reported. "His internal temperature is likely 105 or more. He requires intravenous fluids right away, and we must cool him down this instant." The gunny glanced at Garrett, then turned back to Sloane. "Are you certain? He seemed okay just 10 minutes ago." Sloane responded, "Heat stroke happens very quickly. He is no longer sweating, which is a very dangerous sign. We have about 10 minutes before he could have a seizure, or worse." Sloane was already preparing the intravenous equipment. "I need someone to find Commander Hawkins. We must postpone our mission until Garrett is in stable condition." The gunny did not protest. He left to find the commander. Sloane skillfully put the intravenous needle into a large vein. Saline solution started to flow at a fast rate. She wet some towels with cold water from a cooler and put them on Garrett's neck, under his arms, and on his groin, where the blood vessels are closest to the skin. Frost showed up, holding more water. "How can I help?" he said. "Keep these towels wet and cold. Replace them every 2 minutes. We have to lower his body temperature slowly. If we do it too fast, it can create new problems." Hawkins came over. Sloane presented her findings. "It is heat stroke, sir. Garrett requires a minimum of 30 minutes of medical care before he can be safely moved. I advise that we delay our departure." Hawkins studied Garrett. The young soldier's skin color was already getting a little better as the intravenous treatment started to take effect. "What is your projection for his condition in 30 minutes?" he asked Sloane. "If he gets better with this treatment, he will be awake and stable, but not ready for a fight. My advice is that he remains at the base camp." "Can you keep him stable here?" Hawkins asked. "Yes, sir," she answered. "It is a better option than moving him right now," Hawkins decided. "We will push back our departure by 45 minutes. Garrett stays here. Barrett, you are in charge of him." "Yes, sir." The team adjusted to the new schedule without a single complaint. They had all seen what the desert heat could do, and knew how fast it could take a life. After about 30 minutes, Garrett was already sitting up and drinking water by himself. His skin was returning to a normal color as his body temperature finally went down. He looked over at Sloane with embarrassment. "I am sorry, Doc." "You do not have anything to be sorry about. The heat does not care how strong you think you are." "How did you even know?" Garrett asked. "I barely felt sick before you were already checking on me." "It comes down to training, experience, and paying attention," Sloane answered, taking his vital signs one more time. "You had stopped sweating, your skin looked pale, and you were walking a little unsteadily. Those were all warning signs." Frost kneeled down next to them. I was standing right beside him and did not see any of that. "We have different kinds of training," Sloane said with a simple shrug. A little later, while the team was getting ready to head out, the gunny walked over to her. "You might have just saved his life, Doc." "I was only doing my job, Chief. Most medics would not have seen it until he was already on the ground," he told her. There was a new level of respect in the gunny's voice that she had not heard before. "You have got some sharp eyes." The team finally left at 5:30 in the evening. Sloane watched them fade into the desert landscape. There were 7 operators, moving like ghosts. Stone was on his rifle, Hawkins was in the lead, and Frost and the others were spread out in a perfect tactical formation. She was now alone with Garrett and the drivers. The radio was her only link to what was happening out in the vast desert. Sloane got comfortable and began to wait. Waiting was a huge part of being a combat medic, and it was usually the most difficult part. She knew that people she cared about were walking into danger, and there was nothing she could do to help them until they brought the wounded back to her. If they were able to bring them back, at 7 in the evening, the gunny's voice came crackling over the radio. "Base, this is Entry 1. We are 2 kilometers from the target. Chief Hayes is limping. I need the doc to weigh in." Sloane pressed the microphone button. The chief explained the pain. "I twisted my ankle when I was crossing a ravine. I am fine." "Can you put your full weight on it?" Sloane asked. "Yes." "Does it hurt more when you push off your foot or when you land on it?" There was a short silence. "When I push off." "Can you see any swelling or feel any?" After an even longer pause, Sloane closed her eyes. She could picture the injury perfectly in her mind. It was a grade 2 ankle sprain, maybe even a grade 3. It was the type of injury you could keep walking on with enough adrenaline pumping, but it was also the type that could fail you at the absolute worst time. "Commander Hawkins, this is Barrett. I recommend that Chief Hayes change his assignment. That ankle might give out during close quarters combat. He needs to avoid any quick side-to-side movements or any running," Hawkins's voice replied. "I understand. Hayes, you are on security. You will not enter the building," the chief protested. "Sir, I can still—" "This is not a discussion, Chief." The gunny's frustration was clear, even through the static on the radio, but he accepted the order. Sloane let go of the microphone and looked at Garrett, who was listening from his bed. "You just took Gunny Hayes out of the fight," Garrett said in a low voice. "He is not going to like that at all," Sloane answered. "I would rather have him angry with me than have his ankle fail in a hallway and get somebody killed." "That is a good point," Garrett had to agree. By 8 in the evening it was completely dark. All radio chatter stopped as the team got closer to the target. Sloane checked her medical station for the 4th time. She had stretchers ready, intravenous bags lined up, and her surgical kit opened for treating multiple injuries quickly. She had learned that painful lesson in Afghanistan. Always hope for the best, but you have to prepare for the worst. Because hope was not going to stop a man from bleeding out. At 10 in the evening, the silence was shattered. "Contact! Contact! We are under fire!" The radio suddenly came alive with a mess of overlapping voices. She could hear the sound of guns in the background. It was not the controlled sound of a well-planned attack. It was the pure chaos of a plan that had gone terribly wrong. Hawkins's voice managed to cut through the chaos. "Entry team, sound off. We are pinned down. The information was bad. There are more than 20 enemies here." She heard a loud explosion, which was probably a rocket-propelled grenade. Then she heard the words she always feared. "Frost is hit! Frost is down!" Sloane immediately jumped to her feet. Every muscle in her body tensed. Every part of her wanted to run, to help, to do something. But she was 12 kilometers away, totally helpless. Then she heard Hawkins on the radio. "Doc, we need you right now." "Vehicle 2 is on its way to you." "Sir, I'm on my way," she answered. She grabbed her medical bag. It weighed 60 pounds, which was lighter than her full pack, but it had all the essential life-saving gear. The vehicle sped into the camp, and Sloane jumped inside before it even stopped completely. "Go!" she shouted at the driver. They raced across the open desert. There were no roads to follow, just rocks, sand, and complete darkness. The driver used night vision goggles to see where he was going. Sloane held on tightly to the door, checking her supplies by touch alone. Tourniquets, clotting gauze, intravenous kits, they travelled 12 kilometers in just 8 minutes. The vehicle had to stop because it could not get any closer without being spotted. She would have to cover the last kilometer on foot. Sloane jumped out while the truck was still rolling and started running as soon as her boots hit the ground. The 60 pounds on her back felt like nothing at all. Adrenaline was an incredible thing. She could hear the sound of gunfire just ahead. She saw the flashes from the guns and heard the unique sound of AK-47s mixed with the louder sound of American M4s. She finally reached the team, who were taking cover behind a low wall. Frost was lying on his back, and a large dark patch of red was spreading across his upper leg. It was a high femoral wound, dangerously close to the main artery. He had about 90 seconds before he would go into shock. With less than 2 minutes before he would be gone, Sloane slid on the ground to get to his side. Bullets were flying just inches over their heads. She did not even blink. Her entire world was the patient, the wound, and the job in front of her. "Frost," she said, "look right at me. You will be all right." His eyes were wide with terror. "Doc, I cannot feel my leg. You are losing blood. I am going to stop it. Just hang on." She pulled the tourniquet from her medical bag. Her hands moved with an expert speed that came from endless practice. She put it high up on his thigh, just above the injury. It was the only way to handle this type of bleeding out in the open. She wrapped it one time around his leg. She passed the strap through the buckle and pulled it as tight as she could. Then she put the turning rod into its slot. This was the most critical step. She twisted the rod one full turn. She twisted it a second time, and the band got even tighter. It squeezed his muscle and put pressure on the artery. Frost screamed in pain. Sloane continued to twist. 3 turns, then 4. The bright red blood that was spraying out started to slow down. It became a weak trickle. Then, finally, it stopped. She locked the turning rod into place. She looked at the wound one more time. The bleeding had stopped. She checked for a pulse below the tourniquet. There was not one. That was a very good sign. The tourniquet was applied perfectly. It had taken her only 19 seconds from the moment she got there. The bleeding was under control. "You are stable for now." Frost was taking fast, shallow breaths. "It hurts so much," he gasped. "That just means you are still alive. Being alive is painful. Being dead is not." She quickly inserted an intravenous line and started giving him combat fluids. This would prevent his blood pressure from falling. "You are going to be fine." More gunshots suddenly rang out, and they were much closer than before. Hawkins slid down next to her. "We need to leave this spot. The enemy is flanking us." "Can he walk?" "No, we will have to carry him. Doc, we are still getting shot at. We are trapped here." The next shots came from a totally new direction. It was a rooftop about 280 meters away. Sloane saw the flash from the end of the rifle. She saw the angle. She knew that shooter had a clear shot at Hawkins. Everything seemed to slow down, just like in the old war stories her father used to tell. Everything in her vision became incredibly sharp and clear. The enemy sniper was taking his time. He was a professional. Hawkins had no idea he was there. He was busy with Frost, leaving himself completely open. The shot was going to come in the next 5 seconds. Frost's M4 rifle was only 3 feet from her, right where it fell. It had a standard scope, a full magazine, and the safety was already off. Sloane looked at the rifle, then at Hawkins, and then back up at the rooftop. She could almost hear her father's voice, like he was right beside her. "When the moment comes, you do not have time to think. You just act. Thinking is how people get killed." Then she heard her mother's voice. Promise me you will never even touch a gun again." She thought about Morrison's question. "What are you going to do?" Sloane reached over and grabbed the rifle. Her hands moved on their own. It was pure muscle memory, burned into her from 1,000 hours of practice. It was a skill she had learned as a child. She checked the chamber. There was a bullet ready. She looked through the scope. She calculated the distance and the wind. 280 meters. The target was up high. There was a gentle breeze coming from the east. The bullet would barely drop at that distance with a 5.56 millimeter round. She brought the rifle up to her shoulder. It felt natural, like it belonged there. It felt like she had come home. The gunny saw her. "Doc, what in the world are you doing?" Sloane's entire world became what she saw inside the scope. There was nothing but the crosshairs and the target. An enemy sniper, just a dark shape against the night sky. He was in a crouching position, and his rifle barrel was easy to spot. She controlled her breathing. In for 4 seconds, hold for 7, out for 8. Her heart rate began to slow. She would time her shot for the brief pause between heartbeats. For a perfect, still moment, the man was framed in her sights. Hawkins turned and saw the rifle aimed at him. Barrett Sloane squeezed the trigger, a smooth pull her father taught her. The stock kicked back into her shoulder. The bullet travelled for 2.1 seconds. The enemy sniper snapped backward and disappeared from the roof. A brief silence fell over them. Gunfire still popped in the distance. Men were shouting in Arabic, and Stone returned fire. But for the team, the world went quiet. Frost just stared. "Oh my goodness, did you do that?" Sloane set the rifle down gently. She moved to Frost's side to check his vitals. His pulse was 110. His blood pressure was holding steady. "You will need evacuation, but you are stable." Hawkins stood frozen. He looked from the empty roof back to Sloane. "Where did you learn to shoot like that?" Sloane met his gaze. "My father taught me, sir." "That was a 280-meter shot." "Yes, sir. It was. It was a moving target, while you were under fire." "Yes, sir." Gunny crawled over. "Who in the world is your father?" Sloane hesitated for 3 long seconds. This was the secret she had held onto for 11 years. The truth she had been avoiding. The legacy she never wanted. Gunnery Sergeant Michael Barrett, a Marine Scout sniper. Gunny's face went pale as he recognized the name. He was old enough to know of the man. Mike Barrett, the Mike Barrett. A true legend in Helmand Province? Sloane gave a simple nod. "Oh my goodness." Gunny glanced from the rifle to Sloane and back to the roof. "He was the one who taught you?" "For 4 years, from the time I was 12 until I was 16. And you are a medic." "I made a promise to my mother I would never use a gun after he passed away. I broke that promise today. Hawkins was trying to absorb it all. You just saved my life. I was just doing my job, sir. My job is keeping this team alive. Your job is to be a medic." Sloane looked at Frost's wound, then the clear liquid in his intravenous line. "I did that job too." A fresh burst of gunfire reminded them of the danger. Hawkins made a quick decision. "We are moving out right now. Stone, you and Gunny will take Frost on a stretcher. Barrett, you are coming with me. We will cover the retreat." "Sir, I need to stay with Frost. Frost is stable. You said so yourself. What I need now is a person who can hit a target from 300 meters away. Are you able to do that?" Sloane picked up the rifle and checked it again. "Yes, sir." They began to move. It was an organized retreat, a kind of controlled chaos. Frost was carried on a stretcher by Stone and Gunny. Sloane and Hawkins watched their back. An enemy squad appeared from the east. 4 men were moving in the ruins. Sloane saw them first. "Contact right, 150 meters. 4 hostiles." She shouldered her rifle. She fired 2 rounds for each target, aiming for the center of the body. 1 down, 2 down. In just 4 seconds, 4 enemies were gone. Hawkins just looked at her in amazement. "Where have you been hiding this whole time?" "Right here in the open, sir." They reached the vehicles. They got Frost inside and requested a medical helicopter. It was on its way, about 10 minutes out. While they waited, Sloane took care of Frost. She checked the tourniquet and applied a new bandage. She looked for any dangerous swelling and adjusted his IV. She kept him awake by talking. "Doc," Frost whispered, "I am so sorry I ever doubted you." "You had a good reason to doubt me. I had not proven anything. You definitely proved something today. You would have done the same for me." The helicopter landed in a swirl of dust and sand. They carefully loaded Frost inside. The chopper lifted off and vanished into the night. The team sat in the dark, the rush of battle slowly leaving them. Stone approached Sloane. His own sniper rifle was on his back. "That first shot you took?" "The sniper at 280 meters. I had him in my sights as well. I was about to fire when your shot went off. It was a perfect shot, right through his center." "Thank you, Senior Chief. Do not thank me. Just tell me something. Before tonight, how many real combat shots had you ever taken?" Sloane paused to think. She remembered all the long training days with her father. There were so many. She had fired thousands of rounds in practice. But in a real fight? In a real fight, tonight was the very first time. Stone stood perfectly still. "Your first combat shot was at 280 meters? On a moving target, while being shot at? And you made it on the first try?" "Yes, Senior Chief. Mike Barrett was a very good teacher." "Yes, he was." A memory seemed to cross Stone's face. "I actually met your father one time. It was during a joint training event in 2011 at Camp Pendleton. He was the most natural shooter I had ever witnessed. He told me he was teaching his daughter to shoot. He said you had a special talent for it. He even said you were better than he was at your age." Sloane felt a knot forming in her throat. "He actually said that?" "He was very proud of you. He told me you had the steadiest hands he had ever seen on a young person. He said you just naturally understood the math of it." Stone paused for a second. "He also mentioned that you promised never to use that skill. He said you chose a different way, healing people instead of fighting." "I did, but then tonight happened. Your father would have understood. In fact, he would have demanded it. He taught you how to protect others. That is precisely what you did." They drove back to the base camp without a word. Sloane was alone with her thoughts, feeling the heaviness of her choice. She had broken her word. She used the very skills her father taught her. She had ended a man's life. The logical part of her knew it was the only choice. Hawkins would be gone if she had not acted. Maybe Frost, too. But logic did not ease the heavy feeling in her chest. Back at the base, Hawkins called a meeting to review the mission. "Let us go over what happened out there. The information we had was bad. We met way more enemy fighters than we planned for. Frost got hit. Doc saved him with a tourniquet in less than 20 seconds. Then she saved me with a shot that I did not even see coming. After that, she covered our escape and took out 4 more enemies." He turned to look right at Sloane. "Barrett, you told us you had no combat experience." "I did not, sir. I had only treated people hurt in combat. That is a completely different skill set." "Not any more. It is not." Hawkins folded his arms. "This is what I have to know. Can you do that again if we need you to?" Sloane held his gaze. "Yes, sir. Without any hesitation?" "Without hesitation." Hawkins gave a slow, deliberate nod. "In that case, we must find out what you are truly capable of. What I saw tonight suggests you are far more skilled than any of us realized." Stone spoke up then. "Commander, I ask for permission to officially test the Doc's shooting ability. We should know what we are working with." "I agree. Tomorrow morning at 800. A complete evaluation." Hawkins glanced at the rest of the team. "Does anybody here have a problem with that?" The room stayed completely silent. The doubt they had 2 weeks ago was gone. Now there was only curiosity and a deep professional respect. Gunny put his hand up. "I have one question for you, Doc. Why did you keep it a secret? Why did you not tell us you could shoot like that?" Sloane took a deep breath. "Because when my father passed away, I promised my mother I would never touch a weapon again. I joined the Navy to save people, not to harm them. I honored that promise for 11 years. I broke it tonight because I could not stand by and watch Commander Hawkins die. I will have to learn how to live with my choice, and how to tell my mother. But if I had to choose all over again, I would do the exact same thing." "Do you think your mother will understand?" Gunny asked. "I do not know, Chief," she said, "but I truly hope that she does." The team went their separate ways, tired and trying to make sense of what they saw. Under the night sky, Sloane held her phone, her mother's name on the screen. She could not bring herself to call, not right now. She did not have the words. Instead, she called Morrison, who picked up right away. He said, "Sloane, I heard all about it. Hawkins called me about an hour ago. He asked me about Mike teaching you." I told him the whole story. Morrison paused, then said, "So you finally broke your promise?" Sloane confirmed she had, and she told him everything. She talked about Garrett's heat stroke, Frost's wounded leg, the sniper on the roof, the shots she made, and getting out of there. When she finished, Morrison was quiet for a moment. He finally said, "Your father trained you for this very reason, Sloane. He did not want you to be a killer. He wanted you to be a protector. You kept your team from harm tonight. That was always his goal. That is what all that training was really for." When Sloane mentioned her mother, Morrison reassured her. "Your mother is a lot stronger than you think. She was married to a Marine, and she knew what that meant. She knows what is required." His voice became softer. "Mike would be so very proud of you." He commended her for the shots she took, the lives she saved, and the choice she made. He said, "I am proud of you." Sloane admitted that it did not feel like something to be proud of. Morrison understood completely. It never does, not the first time, not ever, really. But you learn to carry it, because the alternative is to carry the memory of teammates you could have saved. You understand that now?" Sloane shut her eyes. "I understand," she said. He urged her to get some rest, as her test was the next day. He told her to show them everything Mike had taught her and to stop hiding her skills. She simply replied, "Yes, sir." Morrison then added, "And Sloane, you should call your mother. She needs to hear this from you before she hears it from someone else." After he left, Sloane sat alone in the dark for another hour before she finally worked up the nerve to make the call. Her mother picked up the phone after 4 rings. It was late in California, well past midnight. She asked, "Sloane, is something wrong?" Sloane responded, "Mom, there is something I need to tell you." A moment of silence passed. Then her mother said, "You used a gun." It was not a question, but a mother's deep understanding. Sloane asked how she could possibly know. Her mother replied, "I know my own daughter, and I always knew this day might come. Just tell me what happened." So Sloane told her the story, keeping it simple but completely honest. When she finished, her mother was quiet for a long moment. Sloane could hear the soft sound of her breathing, and maybe the sound of crying. Sloane apologized. "Mom, I am so sorry. I know I broke my promise." But her mother's voice was strong when she replied, "Stop that. You made me that promise when you were 16 years old, just after your father passed away. You were only a girl back then. You are not a girl any longer. You are a woman who saved lives tonight. You are your father's daughter, a person who can heal and a person who can protect." Sloane said, "But I killed someone." Her mother corrected her gently. "No, you protected someone. There is a very big difference. Your reason for doing it is what matters. The circumstances matter. You did not act out of anger or for pleasure. You did it because your commander was about to die." Her mother's voice shook just a little. "Your father taught you how to do that because he knew this moment was possible, that you might have to make a choice. He would be so incredibly proud that you made the right one." Tears began to roll down Sloane's cheeks as she whispered, I miss him, Mum. Her mother's voice softened. I do too, sweetheart, every single day, but he is still with you. He is in your skills, in the choice you made, and in the people you saved. After a short pause, she said, I am so proud of you. I am worried for you, but I am proud. Sloane said, I love you, Mum. Her mother replied, I love you too. Now please, come home safe. Then the call was over. Sloane sat alone in the quiet of the desert night. She let herself cry, releasing all the grief and the relief she had been holding inside. When she was done, she wiped her eyes, took a long drink of water, and went to check on Garrett one last time. Tomorrow they would put her to the test, to see what her father had spent 4 years patiently teaching her. Tomorrow she would finally show them everything. The time for hiding was over. She was her father's daughter, a medic and a sharpshooter, both things at once. Morning came quickly. Sloane was up at 500 hours, having barely slept. By 800 hours the shooting range was ready. Targets were set at various ranges, 600 meters, 800, 1,000, and even farther if needed. Stone was there waiting with an M40A5 rifle. The entire team had gathered to watch. This felt like more than just a test. It was a demonstration. The commander wants us to see what you are capable of, so that is what we are going to do, Stone said, as he handed her the rifle. Are you familiar with this weapon system? Sloane replied, Yes, Senior Chief. My father had an M40A3. It is the same platform, just an older version. This is the A5 model. The stock and scope are different, but the core mechanics are the same. Stone nodded. Understood. Your first target is at 600 meters. We have a light wind of about 5 miles per hour coming from the west. Let's see what you can do. Sloane took the rifle, feeling its familiar weight in her hands. She moved into a prone position, deployed the bipod, and settled her cheek against the stock. She lined up her eye with the scope and began a controlled breathing cycle. The target appeared in sharp focus. She mentally calculated the wind's effect and the bullet's drop over 600 meters. Then she adjusted the scope. Her finger found the trigger. She timed her shot with the quiet pause between her heartbeats. That perfect moment of stillness, she squeezed the trigger. Stone, who was watching through a spotting scope, announced, Center mass. A good shot. Let's try again. 800 meters. Sloane adjusted her scope once more, redoing her calculations. The bullet would fall much more at this distance, and the wind would push it farther. She took the shot. He announced. A hit to the upper chest. Stone's voice remained calm and professional. 1,000 meters. Let us see if you can handle that. 1,000 meters was more than half a mile away. At that range, the environment becomes a major factor. Shooting becomes less of a science and more of an art. Sloane had practiced this shot with her father in New Mexico in conditions she knew intimately. But this was a new location, with a different altitude and air density. She took her time. She watched the heat shimmering off the ground through her scope, using it to judge the wind along the bullet's path. She calculated the trajectory. The bullet would drop almost 60 inches at that distance. She made a significant adjustment on her scope, kept her breathing even, and her heart rate low. She found that perfect moment of stillness between heartbeats, a tiny space where time seemed to stand still. She fired. The bullet was in the air for 2 long seconds. It flew in a high arc across half a mile of desert. Stone remained silent as he watched through his scope. After 5 seconds, he finally spoke. Dead center. A perfect hit. Behind them, Gunny let out a low whistle and muttered, Jesus, Doc! Hawkins stepped forward and asked, Barrett, tell me the truth. What is your maximum effective range? What is the farthest you have ever hit a target from? She answered, During training with my father, I made confirmed hits at 1200 meters, sir. I was able to do it consistently. 1200 meters. Hawkins glanced over at Stone. That is world-class marksmanship. That is better than the majority of military snipers, Stone added. Most of our guys are solid around 800 to 1000 meters. 1200 meters requires exceptional skill, excellent gear, and perfect weather. And she is making 1000-meter shots with a rifle she has never used before. Sloane said simply, "My father was a very good teacher. Hawkins considered this new reality. So this is our situation. We have a hospital corpsman who is also a world-class sniper. We need both of her skill sets. The puzzle is how to use both without compromising either one." Stone offered a solution. We could officially designate her as both a combat medic and a designated marksman. The idea has been discussed at high levels before. We just never had someone who could fill both roles. Until today. "What are your thoughts on that, Barrett?" Hawkins asked. Sloane lowered the rifle and looked at her team. These were the same men who had dismissed her just 3 weeks earlier. Now, they looked at her with nothing but professional respect. "Sir, I joined the Navy to save lives. That will always be my primary duty. But I understand now that saving lives sometimes means you have to neutralize a threat. I am prepared to serve this team in whatever capacity is most effective. If that means I need to do both jobs, then I will do both." Hawkins looked at Stone, Gunny, and the other team members. He said, "Let's see a show of hands. Who here supports Barrett serving as both our combat medic and designated marksman?" Every single hand went up without a moment of hesitation. "Then it is decided," Hawkins declared. "Barrett, effective immediately. You are now this team's combat medic and our secondary marksman. Stone will remain the primary sniper. You will provide medical support and also deliver precision fire when the situation calls for it. We will adjust our tactics to take advantage of both of your abilities." He paused for a moment. "You will need more training on advanced techniques, like accounting for the environment, hitting moving targets, and shooting in low-light conditions. Stone will be in charge of your training," she replied. "Yes, sir." Hawkins added one last thing, his expression softening slightly. "Your father trained you exceptionally well, Barrett. I am truly sorry you had to break a promise to use that training, but I am extremely grateful that you did." Sloane just nodded, a lump in her throat making it difficult to speak. The team began to disperse. Stone stayed behind. He said, "Tomorrow your advanced training begins. We will work on long-range environmental effects, engaging moving targets, and low-light operations. These are advanced skills your father likely introduced you to, but we will make it all official," she said. "Thank you, Senior Chief," he responded. "Do not thank me yet. I am not an easy instructor, but you have the strongest foundation I have ever witnessed outside of our most elite units. We will build on that." Stone started to walk away, then stopped and looked back at her. He said, "Your father told me something. The last time I saw him, back in 2011, he said, 'I am not teaching my daughter how to be a killer. I am teaching her how to be a protector. One day someone is going to need protecting, and she will be the only one who can do it. I want her to have that choice.'" Stone looked her straight in the eye. "You were given that choice last night, and you made the right one. That is all he ever wanted for you." Sloane watched him leave, sitting alone with the rifle and her own thoughts. For 11 years she had hidden this part of who she was. That was over. She was Sloane Barrett, daughter of Gunnery Sergeant Michael Barrett, Hospital Corpsman First Class. And now she was a warrior. Her father had blessed her with 2 very different gifts. Now she was finally ready to use them both. 3 weeks after they rescued the contractor, the new mission orders came through. It was a high-stakes operation. An American journalist had been taken hostage near the Turkish border. His name was Thomas Whitfield, a freelance reporter covering the refugee crisis. Intelligence suggested he would be executed in 48 hours. This particular mission was going to be nothing like the first one. Sloane would not be left behind at the base camp this time. Hawkins gathered the team and said, "We are leaving at 400 hours tomorrow. The briefing is tonight at 2000 hours, with a full practice run right after. This mission will be very challenging. The location is complicated, and there are civilians nearby. Our rules of engagement will be incredibly strict." Then he looked directly at Sloane. "Have you ever heard a story about a mission that was doomed from the start?" Barrett's team was prepared for one scenario, but they stepped right into a trap. This is how one person's hidden skill managed to save them all. The mission briefing that evening made the danger perfectly clear. The target's hideout was located deep inside a valley. A small town was situated close by. Intelligence confirmed 15 to 20 hostiles who were a combination of local militia and foreign fighters. Their target, Whitfield, had been seen alive just 12 hours earlier. The report suggested he was scheduled to be executed tomorrow at noon. This gave them an extremely narrow window of time. Hawkins switched to a map of the area. "We will be inserted by helicopter 2 kilometers to the north. Stone is going to set up his sniper nest right here, 800 meters from the compound. The 6-person entry team will then move in on foot. You will breach the compound walls at 0700, just as the sun is coming up. Your job is to rescue Whitfield and get out. You will have a maximum of 90 minutes on the ground." Stone examined the map carefully and saw a major issue. There is only a single road leading in and out of this valley. If they find out we are here, they can easily trap us. There is another escape route, 3 kilometers to the northwest. The helicopter will require a 20-minute warning before it can arrive for pickup. Frost then put his hand up. "What is Whitfield's physical condition?" "We are not sure. We have to assume he has been beaten, possibly even tortured. He may not be able to walk on his own. Barrett, be prepared to give him medical aid and stabilize him quickly." "Yes, sir." "There is also one other thing." A grave expression appeared on Hawkins's face. "Our sources indicate one of the guards could be a former military sniper who might have been trained by the Russians. We must consider this an extremely high-risk situation. Stone and Barrett, you need to be ready for a potential sniper duel." The team drilled until midnight. They practiced how to enter the building, how to get the wounded out, and what to do if the plan failed. They reviewed every step until it felt like instinct. At 3 a.m, Sloane performed a final inspection of her gear. Her medical bag alone weighed 40 pounds. It was packed with tourniquets, bandages, IV fluids, and everything else needed to save a life in combat. Her M4 rifle was ready, along with 4 extra magazines containing 150 bullets. Her Beretta M9 pistol was secured at her hip. Including her body armor and other equipment, she was carrying a total of 110 pounds. She had managed this heavy load before, and she was prepared to carry it again tonight. The helicopter flight was surprisingly quiet. It stayed low to the ground in the dark to avoid detection. They touched down in a dry riverbed, 2 kilometers away from the compound. As soon as they were out, the helicopter disappeared back into the night. An intense silence then settled over the desert. Stone quickly split off, moving silently toward his sniper position on the ridge. The rest of the soldiers, Hawkins, Gunny, Frost, Garrett, Dixon, and Sloane, began their approach to the target. The journey took them 40 minutes. They advanced slowly and with great care, using the darkness as cover. At 06:45, they finally arrived at the compound wall. Stone's voice suddenly came through the radio. "I am in position. I have a visual on the target. My thermal scope is showing—" "Hold on a second. I am seeing many more people than we were told to expect. I can count 25 to 30 of them. Not the 15 to 20 we were briefed on. Hawkins froze. Repeat that last message. 30. I can confirm 30 individuals. A couple of cars just arrived. It seems like they brought reinforcements. The intelligence was completely wrong. Sloane felt a tight knot forming in her stomach. More enemies meant much greater danger. It meant a higher probability that one of them would get hurt. Hawkins made the decision. We are proceeding. Whitfield is not going to survive if we pull out now. Entry team, prepare for a significantly bigger fight. Stone, your job is to eliminate anyone who might block our exit. Barrett, you will stay close to me. They assembled by the door they intended to breach. Frost was in the lead with an explosive charge. Gunny was behind him, followed by Hawkins, and then Sloane. Frost attached the charge to the door. Everyone took a few steps back for safety. He used his fingers to count down. 3, 2, 1. The blast shattered the door in a shower of dust and wood fragments. The team rushed inside. The first room they entered was empty. In the next room, 2 enemies were grabbing for their weapons. Gunny and Frost neutralized them before they had a chance to fire. In the third room, they discovered Whitfield bound to a chair. His face was badly swollen, and his shirt was stained with blood, but he was alive and conscious. His eyes widened in disbelief when he saw the American soldiers. "We have the package," Hawkins reported into his radio. Sloane immediately ran to Whitfield's side. She performed a quick assessment of his condition. He probably had broken ribs and several facial injuries. He was very weak, but could walk with some help. She sliced through the ropes that held him. "Can you walk?" he whispered back. "I think so. Just stay right behind me." At that exact moment, the world around them exploded. A rocket-propelled grenade crashed through the window. The force of the blast threw Sloane violently against a wall. Her ears were ringing loudly, and her sight was blurred. She quickly checked herself for any wounds. Her arms and legs were okay. She was not bleeding. She was still able to fight. But Garrett was down on the floor. Sloane crawled over to him. His left leg was severely injured. One wound was high up on his thigh, dangerously close to the femoral artery. Bright red blood was pulsing from the wound. Not this again, was her first thought. But this situation was different. This time she knew precisely what she needed to do. She reached into her pack for a tourniquet. Her hands moved with skill and confidence. This was the third time she had dealt with this type of injury in combat. The procedure was now automatic for her. She wrapped the tourniquet high on Garrett's leg and pulled the strap tight. She passed it through the buckle and began to twist the rod. Garrett's face contorted in pain, but he remained completely silent. He understood that this was absolutely necessary to save his life. Sloane continued to twist the rod. With every rotation, the pressure increased and squeezed the artery closed. The pulsing flow of blood slowed down to a trickle, and then it stopped altogether. She secured the rod in place and noted the time. The entire process had taken her just 16 seconds. "You are going to be okay." She knew she had to start an IV, but there was no time for that now. Intense gunfire suddenly erupted from outside. It was the distinct sound of a heavy machine gun. Stone's voice came urgently over the radio. "You are taking fire from multiple directions. I can count more than 30 enemies. There is a machine gun positioned on the roof of the north building, about 380 meters from you. I do not have a clear shot from where I am. The other buildings are completely blocking my line of sight." Hawkins quickly assessed their terrible situation. Garrett was stable but unable to move. Whitfield was injured but could still walk. They were trapped by over 30 enemies and pinned down by a machine gun. "We have to take out that gun, or we will never get out of this place alive." Sloane looked carefully out the window. She could see the north building and the machine gun team on the roof. It was a 2-person crew. Stone could not get a shot. She realized she was the only other team member carrying a precision rifle. "Commander, I have a clear shot at that machine gun. Hawkins looked from her to Garrett. "You need to stay here with the wounded." "Garrett is stable for the moment, sir. The tourniquet is holding strong, but none of us are going to be safe if that gun continues to fire." Hawkins knew she was correct. Take the shot. Sloane moved into position at the window and brought up her M4 rifle. She looked through her scope and estimated the distance. It was 380 meters. The wind was very light. At that range, she knew her bullet would drop by about 18 inches. The machine gunner was partially concealed behind a metal shield. She could only see his head and the upper part of his chest. It was an extremely small target, a very challenging shot. However, it was not an impossible one. She steadied her breathing, waited for that natural pause between breaths, and then she fired. The machine gunner jerked backward and collapsed, but a second man instantly moved into his position and began shooting again. Sloane made a slight adjustment to her aim. The new gunner was being much more cautious, exposing less of his body. She fired a second time. The bullet sparked as it hit the gun's metal frame. It was a miss. The gunner ducked down even lower. Sloane tracked his movement, aimed just a little ahead of him, and fired a third shot. It was a direct hit. The second gunner fell. The heavy machine gun was now silent. "Gun is down," Stone's voice confirmed on the radio. "That was excellent shooting, Doc. Entry team, we need to move now." Hawkins helped Whitfield to his feet. Gunny and Frost placed Garrett onto a makeshift stretcher. "Barrett, you are with me. You cover our rear." They began to move out. They carried Garrett on a stretcher they had made from a door and some rope. Sloane and Hawkins provided covering fire as they pulled back. The compound exploded into total chaos behind them. Enemies were now appearing from everywhere. The team had to battle their way across 200 meters of open terrain. Sloane fired at targets as they came into view, using short, controlled bursts. She kept changing her position between shots, exactly as her father had taught her. Fire and move. Never stay in one place. They finally made it to the rally point. They found some temporary cover behind a group of large rocks, 400 meters away from the compound. Sloane's first priority was to check on Garrett. The tourniquet was still securely in place. She started the IV that she did not have a chance to do earlier. His face was pale, but he was conscious. Whitfield was leaning against a rock, breathing heavily. Sloane looked him over one more time. "How do you feel?" he answered weakly. "Like I have been beaten and starved for 4 days." "That is pretty accurate." She handed him some water. "Only take small sips." Hawkins spoke into his radio. "We need to be picked up now at landing zone Alpha. We have 2 men injured. The helicopter is coming. It will arrive in 10 minutes. Just 10 minutes. They needed to hold on for 10 more minutes. Suddenly, Stone's voice crackled over the radio, filled with pain. "I have been hit," he said. "It is my right shoulder. I cannot give you covering fire any more." With that, they lost their sniper. At that exact moment, the enemy began to move forward again. Sloane saw them through her scope. A team of 8 men was advancing on their position. They were just 200 meters away and getting closer. The team was in a very bad spot. Garrett was unable to move, and Whitfield could hardly stand. Stone, their sharpshooter, was hurt. It was impossible to fight effectively while protecting their wounded. Somebody had to stop the enemy advance. Sloane knew what she had to do. "Commander, I will set up a defense right here. I can hold them off while you get the others to the helicopter." "That is a negative. We need you with the injured men." "Sir, Garrett is stable, and Whitfield will be okay for a little while. But if that squad reaches us before the helicopter, we will not survive. Just give me 1 minute. I will slow them down, and then I will follow you." Hawkins understood she was right, but he did not like it. "You have 60 seconds, Barrett. After that, you run." It was a direct command. "Yes, sir," she answered. Sloane grabbed 2 fresh magazines from Frost's pack. She found a good spot about 150 meters away from the others. The position gave her good cover. She had a perfect view of the enemy's approach. She lay down, resting her M4 rifle on its stand. She had 90 bullets ready and more in her Beretta M9 pistol. 8 hostiles were moving toward them, now 180 meters away. She picked her first target, the man in the front. She fired 2 shots directly into his chest, and he fell immediately. The other 7 men were well trained and quickly found cover. They returned fire, and bullets chipped away at the rocks around Sloane. She remained perfectly calm. She found her next target, fired, and a second man went down. She checked her watch. 15 seconds had gone by. She had 45 seconds left. The 6 remaining enemies began to move with skill. 3 moved to her left to get around her, and 3 moved to her right. It was a classic military tactic. Sloane aimed at the group on her left. She fired 2 quick shots at each man. 1 fell, another was hit, and the third ducked back into hiding. The group on the right used the distraction to advance. They were now only 100 meters from her position, much too close. Sloane scrambled 20 meters to her right, giving herself a new line of sight. The enemy continued to fire at her last position, reacting too slowly to her movement. From her new spot, she turned her attention to the group on the right. There were 3 of them, now only 70 meters away. She fired in short, controlled bursts. 1, 2, and 3 all fell. 30 seconds were left. Only 3 of the first 8 enemies remained, and they were staying hidden. They were proceeding with caution now. From behind her, she heard the sweet noise of the incoming helicopter. It was the sound of salvation. 15 seconds left. One of the last 3 enemies decided to move. He was holding something big. Through her scope, Sloane recognized it instantly. It was a rocket-propelled grenade launcher. He was preparing to shoot down the helicopter. He was on the move, now 240 meters out. She had only a few moments before he could take his shot. If that rocket connected with the helicopter, it would be over for everyone. Sloane instantly calculated the wind, the distance, and the moving target. She took one last deep breath and found a moment of complete focus. She pulled the trigger. The man with the launcher crumpled to the ground. The weapon fell uselessly beside him. The helicopter landed safely at the extraction point. It was her turn to run. Sloane left her cover and sprinted toward the helicopter. It was a 150-meter run, carrying all of her combat gear. Every muscle in her legs screamed in protest. The last 2 enemies fired at her, and bullets whistled past her. They were close, but they all missed. She ran with everything she had, zigzagging to make herself a harder target. 50 meters to go, Gunny appeared at the helicopter door. "Go, Doc! Move!" 25 meters left. She was so close. Gunny reached out, grabbed her by the arm, and hauled her inside the helicopter. The aircraft lifted off the ground right away, banking hard as it flew higher and faster. Sloane fell to the floor, struggling to catch her breath. The adrenaline was fading, leaving her shaking. Lying on his stretcher, Garrett stared at her with admiration. Doc just fought off 8 enemies all by herself. 5, Sloane corrected him while gasping for air. "I only fought 5. The other 3 ran away. Frost just shook his head in disbelief. "That last shot, the guy with the launcher." "You were running and still made a shot from 240 meters. Sloane gave a tired smile. "You do what you have to do in desperate situations." Hawkins came and knelt next to her. "You saved all of us again." Sloane was too worn out to answer. The reality of what she had just done was beginning to sink in. The violence, the men she had killed, the awful need for it all. But they were safe. Garrett, Whitfield, and the entire team were safe because she did what was necessary. Stone was sitting against the bulkhead. his right shoulder covered in bloody bandages. Sloane pushed herself to her feet. "Senior Chief, I need to see that shoulder. I am all right, Doc." "You are not all right until I say so. Let me look." She carefully cut the sleeve of his uniform. The entry wound was small and clean, but there was no exit wound. The bullet was still in there. A clean shot that went through would have been much better. "This is going to stay in until a surgeon can remove it," she explained. She cleaned the area with saline, packed it with special gauze to control the bleeding, and wrapped it tightly. Stone tightened his jaw from the pain, but remained silent. "You are going to need an operation to get that bullet out, but you are not bleeding to death. The nerves and blood vessels look unharmed." She tied off the final bandage. "You should be able to use a rifle again in 6 weeks." 6 weeks? Stone's expression hardened. "Doc, I have to be ready in 3. Take the full 6 weeks," she said with authority, "or you might have permanent nerve damage. The choice is yours, Senior Chief." Stone gave a slow nod. 6 weeks it is. The helicopter brought them back to the main base. Garrett and Stone were immediately sent to surgery. Whitfield was taken for a medical evaluation and to give his report. The rest of the team went to clean their weapons and write up their own reports. Sloane sat alone in the medical bay, trying to make sense of it all, feeling the terrible weight of her actions. 2 days after, Admiral Morrison flew in. The team stood in their formal uniforms for a special meeting. As Morrison walked into the room, everyone stood at perfect attention. "Be seated," he said, walking to the front. "I have read the reports from your latest mission, and what I have read is nothing short of incredible." He made eye contact with each team member before his eyes settled on Sloane. In the past month, Petty Officer Barrett has saved 4 lives with her medical training. She has also stopped 9 enemy fighters, defended a position by herself against a larger group, and made the rescue of an American civilian journalist possible. Morrison then walked right up to Sloane. Her father, Gunnery Sergeant Michael Barrett, was one of the best Marines I ever had the honor of knowing. He taught his daughter more than just how to shoot. He taught her how to serve and to protect. He taught her that sometimes healing someone requires violence, and that violence can be its own form of healing. He stopped for a second. When Mike passed away 11 years ago, Sloane made a promise to her mother that she would never hold a gun again. She honored that promise for 11 years. She broke it 3 weeks ago in order to save her commander. She has broken it again and again to protect her teammates and to ensure the mission succeeded. Morrison's voice softened. Mike would have understood that. In fact, he would have insisted on it. He taught her those skills because he knew she might face this exact situation one day. And I can promise you, her teammates are grateful for the choice she has made every time. He looked directly into Sloane's eyes. "Your father did not raise you to be a killer, Petty Officer Barrett. He raised you to be a protector. You are living up to his lessons with every single action." Morrison then took a set of official documents. "Effective today, I am recommending you be officially designated as both a combat medic and a sharpshooter. This is to formally recognize the skills you have repeatedly demonstrated. Furthermore, I am putting you in for the Navy and Marine Corps Achievement Medal for your heroic actions during the rescue of Whitfield." Sloane felt a knot tighten in her throat. "Sir, I was only doing my job. Your job now involves things that most medics are never asked to do. It involves things that most soldiers find difficult to do." Morrison gave her a slight smile. "Mike would be proud of you. So very proud." The team's response was immediate. Gunny stepped up and did something highly unusual. He gave her a salute, even though they held similar ranks. It was against the rules, but the respect behind it was clear. Sloane saluted him back. Frost was next, holding out his hand. "I was wrong about you, Doc. I was totally and completely wrong." "You were not wrong, Frost," she said. "You just did not know the whole story. You've earned this. Stone was the last one to come over, his arm resting in a sling. He offered her a small, unique patch. It displayed a Navy SEAL trident with a medical cross placed over it. A red cross sat in the center, surrounded by the gold trident. "It is not official," Stone said, "but it is the truth. You are both. You need to own that." That evening Sloane sat by herself, studying the patch and thinking about the long road that had led her here. She considered the promises she had made and the ones she had to break, the father she lost and still honored, and the woman she had now become. Her phone started ringing. It was her mother. Sloane picked it up. "Mum? I saw the report on the news," her mother began. "They said an American journalist was rescued in Syria. A SEAL team was part of it." Her mother's tone was careful. "Were you a part of that?" "Yes," Sloane answered. A long pause filled the line. "Are you injured?" "No. I am okay, physically." But what about the emotional toll? Sloane wondered how she could possibly explain it. "I am still trying to process everything. It is very complicated. Your father always said things like that after he came home. He said he needed time to make peace with what he did and who he was." Her mother inhaled deeply. "Sloane, I want you to know something. I am not happy you broke your promise, but I do understand your reasons. And I am incredibly proud of you. I took more lives, Mum." "You protected more lives," her mother gently corrected. "You saved people as a medic and as a fighter. That is the lesson your father taught you." Her mother's voice was strong. "Your reason for doing it is what counts. You are not killing out of revenge or enjoyment. You are keeping your teammates safe. That is completely different. That is about service. I just miss him so much." "I know," her mother replied softly. "I miss him as well. I think about him every single day." There was a quiet moment. "But he is always with you, my dear. He is there in the skills you possess, the decisions you make, and in every life you manage to save in both ways." Their talk continued for a while. Her mother asked for some details, and Sloane told her everything she was permitted to share. The healing process was finally starting for them both, as understanding began to take the place of their sorrow. After the call ended, Sloane remained in the silence for a long time. Then she made up her mind. She carefully sewed the special patch onto the sleeve of her uniform. Official or not, it showed the world exactly who she was now. 6 months later, Sloane Barrett was standing before a classroom at the Naval Special Warfare Center in Coronado. 16 students sat before her, a group of corpsmen and operators attending the very first course of this kind. The course was titled Integrated Combat Medicine and Tactical Shooting. It was a program she had designed. "Welcome to ICMTS," she started. "This program was created because war does not care about your job title. A firefight does not ask if you are a medic or a shooter. It requires you to be both. We are here to train you to be both." She then walked toward the demonstration area. A training dummy lay on the floor, and a shooting range could be seen through the windows in the back. "The first rule is this," she said. "Treating the wounded is always the highest priority. Always. Your fundamental mission is to save lives. But for your patients to live, you must first deal with the danger. Sometimes that means you have to fight first, and sometimes that requires you to kill. Knowing how to switch between those roles is what makes an operator truly elite." Sloane started her demonstration, putting this integration into practice. She treated a simulated wound on a thigh, applying a tourniquet flawlessly. The entire action took just 19 seconds. Then she immediately transitioned to her rifle and dropped into a firing stance. She fired at a target 300 meters out, landing a perfect shot. Then she was immediately back to the patient, inserting an intravenous line and providing more medical care. The whole exercise was finished in 47 seconds. The students could only watch, completely stunned. "This is not about being the best medic or the sharpest shooter," Sloane told them. "It is about being effective enough at both roles so that your team knows they can rely on you for either one at any given time. Are there any questions?" A young female corpsman, who looked to be in her early 20s, nervously put her hand up. "Petty Officer Barrett, how do you manage that conflict? The whole point of medicine is saving life. The whole point of combat is taking it. How do you reconcile the two?" Sloane considered her question. It was a question she had wrestled with herself. "You do not try to balance them," she explained. "You combine them. Both of these jobs share one single goal: to protect your team. At times that involves applying bandages to wounds. Other times it involves taking out the person who is creating those wounds. Both actions are a type of service. Both actions are completely necessary. But is that not a violation of your medical oath to do no harm? That oath is about preventing unnecessary harm, but the context of the situation matters. Allowing your team to be injured when you have the power to stop it, that is a form of harm. Taking an enemy life to save the lives of your team, that is simply battlefield triage. We are forced to make these kinds of decisions in hospitals constantly. This is the exact same principle, just applied on a much larger scale. The class continued for 6 hours. They went through hands-on training, medical scenarios, and live-fire drills. The students worked on switching between the two different mindsets seamlessly. When the class was over, Sloane headed back to her office. Her desk was covered in a mountain of paperwork. There were proposals from 3 Veterans Affairs hospitals that wanted to use her training program, official memos from the Department of Defense about expanding it, and notes from other women in the service who were seeking her guidance. But a single email caught her eye. The subject line read, "You have changed everything." It came from Hospital Corpsman 3rd Class Sarah Mitchell, who was stationed at Camp Pendleton. "Petty Officer Barrett, I am a corpsman with the 2nd Battalion, 5th Marines. I heard the story of what you did, being both a medic and a marksman. My father was an Army Ranger. He showed me how to shoot before he died when I was 14. I decided to join the Navy because I promised my mum I would be a healer, not a fighter. But hearing your story showed me that I do not need to choose just one. I can be loyal to both parts of who I am. Thank you for demonstrating that this kind of path is possible, for showing that women can handle these mixed combat roles without losing a part of themselves. You have genuinely changed my life." Sloane read the email 3 separate times. She reflected on her own legacy, and how the actions of one person can send out ripples. Her father's life had sent out a ripple that had eventually reached her, and now she was sending out her own ripples that were reaching others. The cycle was moving forward. That evening Sloane drove to a shooting range with a view of Coronado Beach. It was the same place where SEAL candidates train, and where her father had once stood, watching the operators and dreaming of a big future for his daughter. She set up her rifle, an M4A5, to attempt a 1,000-meter shot. This was the type of shot that distinguished the skilled from the legendary. The sun was setting, the wind from the ocean was picking up, and the air was growing cold. Every single condition was working against her ability to make a clean shot. She calculated all the factors, made adjustments for each variable, got her breathing under control, lowered her heart rate, and found a moment of total calm. Then she squeezed the trigger. The bullet flew for 2 seconds, crossing more than half a mile through the twilight air. She looked through her spotting scope. It was a perfect shot, dead center. She quietly said, "Still have it, Dad?" In her mind, she could hear his voice, as real as the day he had taught her. "You always did, my dear. You were already better than I was by the time you were 16. Now, You are the best there has ever been. I miss you." "I know," his voice seemed to answer, "but you are not alone. You have got your team, your students, and your purpose. This is everything I ever hoped for you. Not that you would follow my exact path, but that you would discover your own way to honor the lessons I gave you." Sloane gathered her gear and started the drive back to the base. Her phone vibrated. It was a message from Hawkins. "Mission briefing is tomorrow. 8 o'clock in the morning. This is a very complex operation. We are going to need every one of your skills." She smiled and sent her response. "Ready, sir." In just 6 months she had saved 23 lives. She had performed medical work that stopped certain death. Her skills in combat had kept her own team from being harmed. But the story was not in the numbers. It was in the faces. Garrett was alive because she put on a tourniquet in only 16 seconds. Hawkins was alive because she made a 280-meter shot when it was absolutely critical. Whitfield was back home with his family because one person had the medical training to stabilize the injured and the fighting ability to hold off the enemy. Sloane Barrett, daughter of Michael Barrett, petty officer, first class, hospital corpsman, and designated marksman. She was both a healer and a warrior. She was not just one thing or the other, she was a perfect blend of both. It was the way her father had raised her. Her legacy was not defined by the shots she took or the enemies she fought. It was defined by the teammates she kept safe, the students she mentored, and the new roads she had proven could be traveled. She demonstrated that you could unite both worlds, that you were not forced to choose between healing and fighting. She proved that the most elite warriors understood both sides. The following day would bring new challenges, more people to save, and more dangers to navigate. It would be another opportunity to demonstrate what full integration really meant. But for that night, she was finally at peace. A promise she had believed was broken was actually being honored, in a manner her 16-year-old self could have never imagined. Her father would have been proud. Her mother had finally made peace with her daughter's career. The team she worked with trusted her with their lives. The students she taught looked at her with respect, and in the years to come, others would follow the example she set. They would see that true service can be performed in many ways, and that protecting people requires a wide range of talents. They would learn that the greatest among them could be masters of both. That was who Sloane Barrett was. It was what her father had prepared her for. It was what the mission demanded. A person who could heal and a person who could fight. A medic and a sharpshooter. She was both at the same time.